I don't have time for this bullshit.
Ha! Bullshit, bullshit, bullshit. All this guy ever does is BS. Anyway, it's time for another edition of BSing with Big Nate.
Welcome into another edition of BS with Big Nate. This round, Mindy's Macabre movie madness. And of course, it goes without saying, joined by Mindy Jackson of Dying Oath. Mindy, hi.
Hi, how are you?
I am good. Full disclosure, this is pre-recorded. Dying Oath actually performed back on Thursday night at Metal in the Mountains, West Virginia, and we had to record to accommodate that. So we are seeing her pre-show. I'll find out later from her how the show actually went and update you. But
we can just say it went awesome. It's fine.
You know what? I believe in you guys. I'm confident. Everything I've seen and heard, I don't think you've disappointed. Do you think you've had a bad set? Like, has there been a night where you're like, man, that was just awful?
We played these back-to-back shows, and both of them were really long trips. And we played Friday night in Richmond and then Saturday night in North Carolina. And it was super hot, and we hadn't eaten a lot. We were on the road. We hadn't slept a lot. And I wouldn't say it was like a terrible set. I don't really remember how good it was because I was so loopy and out of it. But I will say I felt like absolute crap to the point where I told the people in the front row that if I fell off the stage just to catch me and pretend like it was part of the show because I was so exhausted.
I can't even imagine. Other note of importance. Last time we talked, you guys were in the process of taking auditions for a new clean vocalist, and that slot has since been filled. So give me a little background on that.
Yeah, we had close to 70 auditions, which we couldn't get them all in the studio, obviously. Most of those were videos and whatnot, and we had to weed them out as opposed to, like if they were 5 or 6 hours away, then we're like, oh, well, that's not going to work out. So we took them all down, process of elimination. We took it down to about 3, and we let them all come in once or twice. Actually, we had 4 of them, and Jakob won fair and square. He met all of the needs that we had in mind, and he's been doing really well. All of his shows have been great so far, so we're really proud of him.
That's exciting to hear. I was thinking about even the show on Thursday that we don't know how it happened yet. It went well. So, you said something there that kind of brings me to our discussion today in a very weird roundabout way. So you were taking when you were taking video auditions, were they people just sending in clips of themselves, or was it actually like this, like a Zoom?
It was mostly just people sending in clips of them singing like 1 or 2 of our songs, or just singing a cappella to whatever. And it was a lot.
Kind of like video dating, which brings me to this edition of Mindy's Macabre Movie Madness. We're talking about mass killers. You know the drill by now. If you've seen these before, we task each other to watch a movie and then we discuss the movies. I assigned Mindy Hush. She assigned me Valentine, which came out in 2001, and somehow I completely missed it. And I'm ready to talk about these damn movies. Do you want to go first and talk about Hush, or do we want to talk about Valentine first?
I'll go first. I had actually seen the first few minutes of it, and then I'd fallen asleep and I never went back to watch it. So I'm really glad that you gave this movie to me because I completely just stepped over it, but I'm glad that I watched it because it was a really good movie. And basically it's about this lady who can't hear, and she's a writer, and she's out in the woods, and she's doing all of this whatever. She lives by herself, and things get really crazy when this guy shows up, and then she's fighting for her life.
Yeah, I think the dynamic of that movie is one of the more what was the other one called? Is it Don't Blink or Don't Breathe? But it deals with the killer, the bad guy, and that one, of course, is blind, and it's a reverse on the home invasion. I don't know what it is. I really like these like that home invasion concept because it's really easy to make a great movie with a very small cast. Like, for instance, The Strangers, one of the best of all time. You can do it with like 5 people and get it done really cheap and really effectively. But I really like that twist where the fact that she's deaf and it's largely not reliant on dialogue.
I agree. I think the fact that, she had no hearing whatsoever really put her at a disadvantage, but that's what made the whole movie. I thought it was great.
It was definitely skin crawling. There are some things I was doing some research that I learned about the movie that I did not know. Apparently they kind of made it with like a personal budget. Mike Flanagan, the director, and his wife, who plays the main character, Kate Siegel's her name. They like wrote the script together and like kind of shot the whole thing in the confines of what they could do in their life, and then managed to pitch it and sell it in Toronto. And it almost didn't happen, but I'm extremely glad it did. Of course, Mike Flanagan's directed things like Absentia, Oculus, and kind of has a real niche in horror. But I think this one's really unique. And yes, there is a mask, so that's why we assigned it. There's masked killers, kind of an old trope. But I mean, if you're gonna commit a felony or multiple felonies, you got to obscure your identity. And this one, there's a moment in it, by the way, spoiler alert, there's a moment in it that I find even more sinister is when she writes on the mirror in the lipstick, the didn't see face, won't tell anyone, like trying to like get him to go away. And then the dude lifts his mask. Like, well, now you've seen my face. And I think that is just such an intimidating power move, unlike anything you usually see in these mass killer movies.
I completely agree with that. That was probably my favorite part of the movie, except for the ending, of course. But that's lived with me. This is one of those ones, like, I don't know that people necessarily are going to watch it a bunch of times, but it's one that like stands out to me as something that I would put in my upper echelon of home invasion, mass killer, slasher movies, because it's so unique and it's such a like my heart was beating fast the whole movie. Mine too. It's definitely one of those things where you're sitting on the edge of your seat because you don't see what's going to happen. Most of these movies you're like, okay, I can kind of see where this is going, but at the end you're like, oh, okay, well, crazy.
So we got to rate this one, and then we've got another one to talk about. Hush. How many machetes are you giving it?
I'm gonna give this one 8.5, like almost a 9 for me. I thought it was really well done. And of course the intimidation factor and the fact that she can't hear, like all of those things together for me really kept me on my toes the entire time. I loved it. I thought it was great.
I want to say with my rating, I want to say that they did a really good job of kind of putting you in the shoes of someone who is deaf and nonverbal. But being that I don't have that experience, I can't necessarily say that is the case. It's kind of like someone explaining, like, well, what do blind people see? And blindness comes in varying degrees. So I want to feel like this is a good representation, but I don't know any deaf people who I can ask. So if you're out there watching, let me know on the portrayal of someone who's deaf what exactly is going on. And yes, this is subtitled, by the way. Facebook generates those for us. So I'm not crazy to think that people are watching this. I do think this stands out. I'm going to actually go higher than you. This was one that has kind of lived with me, and I've only watched it like twice, but it just something that like replays and lives in my brain. And I'm going to give it a 9. I think 9 out of 10. It's not perfect for what it is. It's damn incredible, and everyone should go out and watch it immediately. It's on Netflix, so it doesn't get much easier than that. Everyone has Netflix at this point. Now, I want to talk about the movie you assigned me, Valentine, 2001. I had never seen it before, and this is where we tie into the whole video audition process. I didn't realize 2001 was long enough ago that video dating was a thing. There is a scene in the movie where this girl is going through videotapes of guys who are looking for a potential suitor. I find that little blast from the past. I do want to ask you, when did you see this movie?
I actually saw it when it came out, and I actually went out the very next day and bought the soundtrack because the soundtrack on that is amazing. And it actually became one of my movies that like you said, stuck with me. So I actually went out and bought it like after I'd watched it in theaters. So I watched it when it came out, and of course I was a lot younger at that time. So it was just one of those things where I just couldn't get enough of it. I watched it over and over and over. I was really surprised you hadn't seen it.
Yeah, I completely missed it. Okay, so the other thing is David Boreanaz. I think that's how you say his last name. I don't know. Which do you know him from, Buffy or Bones?
Definitely Buffy. I was a Buffy fanatic. I still kind of am. I still watch it sometimes, but I do love Bones though. I can't lie. I love both of those.
See, I saw Bones before I saw Buffy, but
Really?
yeah, and so I've
Um,
always known him as Agent Booth.
Teenage girls though, pretty much all of us like loved Buffy. It was just kind of one of those things. So
So the concept behind this movie, I mean, there's a movie for every damn holiday at this point. I think there's even a Labor Day slasher, but this one, it doesn't necessarily deal with. Oh no, I guess it does. There are several Valentine's movies. My Bloody Valentine, the original,
one of our favorites.
the remake, and I've always loved like that whole coal mining town feel. This is very much a peak 2000s Valentine movie. You've got the video dating tapes. You've got all these like random ass. I want to take my date to this college party,
Mhm.
and it's just very 2000s. Essentially, a guy gets bullied in school, which is usually the root of these. Is there's some sort of past trauma, and 13 years later, which is where we're at, which is interesting because David Boreanaz's character would have been in his 20s. The dude was like 35 at the time. So casting A+ for getting those teenagers and young 20s. And it, good Lord, we are cursed here. Our Kurt Cobain poster just fell off the wall. If you heard that.
I did.
It's haunted. But yeah, so 13 years later, college girls are dying, and it's very much your stereotypical mask slasher. This mask in particular is Cupid. And there are a lot of things that I found strange in this movie. I do want to talk about the soundtrack because it was peak 2000s. You had Deftones, Orgy, Marilyn Manson, Rob Zombie. There were a couple others that like stood out. I was like, man, this would have been right up my avenue, and I would have done the exact same thing you did, is go out and buy that soundtrack because it's very new metal oriented. Apparently, it was it stood out so much that Saturday Night Live had a skit making fun of the soundtrack, like one of their fit commercials. I did not know that. But what I really liked about what this movie did is they did not take it too seriously at all. It is very much a fun watch. And a lot of times you see sexism and gender bias towards women in movies. In this movie, the men don't come out looking so hot either. Like they're all really, really douchey.
Yeah, they are. I think that's kind of what made it though. It's like you have all these innocent girls who are not so innocent, and they can't figure out who the killer is because they're all douchebags.
Okay, and I want to talk about the other thing. Every time Cupid, Jeremy Melton, every time someone gets killed, blood comes out of the mask at the nose, and there's a nosebleed, which becomes very important later in the story. But am I wrong, or did I miss it? Did they ever explain why the nosebleed?
I don't think so. I think they kind of just like pointed toward, he freaks out every time, something happens or whatever, and that's what causes him to have a nosebleed because of his nerves or whatever. But I don't think they ever do explain exactly what is going on with that.
Yeah, that was a little bizarre. I will say Jeremy Melton had a bit of a glow up. Gawky,
Huge.
tiny, nerdy kid becomes Booth from Bones or Angel from Buffy and Angel, which they actually made a reference to in the movie when one of the characters who was dating him said, he's no angel, but he's pretty great. So I do like the tongue in cheek. I mean, they were full on, and I liked it a lot. I have to be honest with you. It's not necessarily my favorite slasher, but it is a good turn your brain off and watch this movie. So much so that I had rented it from YouTube, and then I just went ahead and bought the damn thing because that's a good, like, no pressure, entertaining watch. Have you watched it? When's the last time you checked it out?
It's been a couple of years probably, but I used to watch it every Valentine's Day. So
You know what? That a little double feature. I don't think it's as good as My Bloody Valentine, but I will say it is one that I will probably be breaking out again in February.
it's funny that you say that because I actually bought Hush after I watched that movie too. So I think we did good this time.
Yeah, I think we did really good this time. All right, so I want you to go ahead, and I'm going to let you rate first on Valentine.
I'm gonna have to give it a 9 simply because, like it's still to this day one of my favorite movies. I think the plot twist was great. I think, like you said, they did really good for the time that it was made, how perfectly everything just kind of made it feel like reality. And I really like the tongue in cheek, I like the comedy with the horror. I think it had something for everybody, and I absolutely love the soundtrack. So, gonna go with a 9.
I'm going to give two separate ratings. One for the movie, one for the soundtrack. The soundtrack gets a 10.
Absolutely.
Absolutely gets a 10. The movie itself, like I said, they don't take themselves very seriously. It's tongue in cheek. It's very much what a holiday themed slasher should be. And you're going to be hard pressed to find one that's as entertaining that if come Valentine's Day, you want to scare your sweetheart and have them curl up next to you, you're going to be hard pressed to find much better. My Bloody Valentine and Valentine would be an excellent. And watch the original My Bloody Valentine.
Yes.
Not that I hated the remake or anything, because I think it was one of the better remakes there are, but the original, not enough people have seen it. And Valentine, because it's peak 2000s teen scream. And I'm going to give it an 8.5. I think 8.5 machetes.
Perfect.
My Bloody Valentine, for reference, gets a 10. So the bar is pretty high. Okay. There is one more thing I want to talk about. Of course, this is about masked killers. And I want to talk about some of the masks that have stood out in slashers. And I want to get your opinion because, of course, you have the Michael Myers mask right behind you. What are your favorite masks of all time?
Oh, we were talking about the strangers earlier. I actually have one of those on my wall. I have a thing for masks, so this is like a perfect thing for me. But I really like the strangers because of all the masks and, the bag heads and things like that. Scream, obviously, it's one of those iconic things.
Yeah, when you were turning, I saw the ghost face behind you as well.
Yeah, I have ghost face as well. Just a lot of the originals that stuck with me. Jason, Michael Myers. There's just so many. Hush is one of my new favorites. It's so simple, but now it's kind of got that stigma to it. So I really enjoy that. Leatherface, one of my all-time favorites.
I think Leatherface takes the rank as most intimidation factor in a mask because that is other people's faces that he's wearing.
Yeah.
And I think the only wearing human skin scene in a movie that remotely comes close is House of a Thousand Corpses when Otis wears the person's face. Oh yeah, and then they did reuse that gambit in the Devil's Rejects because they put her husband's face on her.
Yeah, that to me was like that was terrible.
I mean, they were both very, very intense watches. I think those stand out. Leatherface has to be my top of all time, but I love Jason Voorhees. Actually, I'm probably one of the few who prefers the bag over the head over the hockey mask. It's just because there's something so like he was so freaky looking. He just wears this bag over his head. And I always thought that, found that really entertaining and messed up. Of course, that would never really hold up well today. And as far as innovation goes, Leslie Vernon, Behind the Mask, The Rise of a Serial Killer. His
Mhm.
mask is very unsettling because it looks like a human face with the teeth all removed and it's weirdly proportioned. And it always made me uncomfortable. But the other thing was his focus on how important the mask was in branding yourself as a successful serial killer.
I agree.
So that's another underrated mask that I think gets not enough appreciation. But do you have any recommended viewing other than Valentine or Hush in the Mask Killer vein?
All of the ones that we talked about, if you haven't seen any of these movies, you should watch all of them. If you're into slashers, if you're into masked killers, like definitely watch all of these movies. Leatherface, you've got to see all of those. You have to see all the Texas Chainsaw Massacres.
Oh,
If
that's
possible.
another little tie there for you. The director of Valentine did the remake for Texas Chainsaw Massacre and the remake for Friday the 13th.
Did not know that.
Fun little tidbit there for you. And that is going to do it for another edition. Mindy, break a leg at the show that was 2 days ago. And thank you so much for joining me again.
Thank you, Nate. It's always nice to see you.